So you might be tempted to think, well, I can just be responsible, I can be accountable. But really, what is underlying and in the discussion that we're having is that there's some deeper qualities that allow us to do that. And it's how we relate to them that makes a difference. We use the being discourse because it does allow us to understand and in a way articulate those deeper parts of us that are contributing to this victim mentality or us relating to ourselves as a victim of circumstances.
Hello, everyone. A new episode of a new series. So, in this series, I'm going to have Lucy Faulconer with me, and we're going to discuss deep, common human experiences from phenomenological perspective. Lucy, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Ashkan. It's good to be here with you and starting this series together. I'm Lucy Faulkner, as you said. I'm a psychologist and leadership coach, and I've been doing this for now over 15 years. And I am also the general manager for Being Profile, so I get to work with a lot of our coaches, support them, and train them to use the Being Profile as one of the key frameworks they use in their work.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Yeah, so Lucy is, first of all, is my friend. Lucy is a person who has extensive experience working with leaders and organizations as an organizational psychologist and as a coach. And also, Lucy is a graduate of Being Mastery, that the exclusive and advanced program that I run myself. So she has experience in the field as well as like in-depth understanding of the being profile. Now we have the opportunity for a couple of years that we have Lucy being a general manager of Being Profile. So yeah, so Lucy, what is the topic that we want to talk about today?
We're going to start with one that a lot of us experience, and it's quite common for us as humans, that is victimhood.
Also, yeah. So victimhood, yeah. So now you're in the field, at the forefront, working with both coaches and leaders. Yeah. So in working with coaches and leaders, um, where exactly this victimhood shows up?
It, it's interesting because I see it everywhere, and I see it in a way that is such a common experience to go into this frame of mind or in this way of looking at life and ourselves where we want to blame the circumstances or put the blame on others beyond ourselves for for what's happening in our lives. And the reason I say it's everywhere because sometimes we think that this is something we only happens to some kind of people, and we categorize people as victims. But the experience of victimizing ourselves is quite common once you're present to it. And the reason why it's so important to bring it up in this conversation for me is because I can see that in the conversations at least we have normally, Ashkan, is that where we put the blame, we put the power. And the work that we do is all about empowering people and empowering people to not only live their best life, but also achieve the results that they want.
Yeah. So let me jump in here. So this is something that we hear that lots of people talk about. Yeah, empowering others. In the context of coaching, there's lots of life coaches, there's lots of executive coaches, to the point that sometimes this coaching thing has turned into something that is a different. There's so many different things that we refer to using the word coaching. Yeah, but so let me ask you, what is this victimhood? Like what do we mean when we talk about victimhood?
I'd start with there's a lot of things in our lives that we don't control that in a way happen to us. Yeah. And some of those things can
Mm,
be good, and some of them we can experience them as this is something difficult, this is something bad. And we can tend to look out and say, okay, all of these things are happening to me. And in a sense, yes, there are things
mm,
that happen to us that we don't control. But when we talk about victimhood, is how do we relate to those things, and then where do we feel that we are out of choice or out of possibilities to actually
mm.
influence how that affects us.
Yeah. So that's like the conversation around us being vulnerable to so many different things, and that's a fact.
Yeah.
Um, it's like we're vulnerable to many diseases. We're vulnerable to viruses, these very small microorganisms. We're vulnerable from the get go when we join this life. And we need others to care about us, to care for us, and take care of us. So we're vulnerable to our cheating partner, to our angry neighbor. So we're vulnerable. The thing is, but the thing is, like, not all of us, though, we live life from this viewpoint. Now, being vulnerable can make us a victim because you're not the only life, you're not the only one who lives this life, and there are other minds that they can autonomously um, make decisions, and some of the decisions that your neighbor, your partner, your colleague, and the rest of the people are going to make is going to impact you. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Lucy. You said that there are things, there are matters in life that happens, and we're not the source. At least we perceive ourselves not to be the source. Now, and then that's exactly the source of victimhood. Yeah. So I am a victim. And maybe we are. Yeah. And in some cases we are. But I think what happens is some of us, in some cases, we may so emphasize on that victimhood due to the relationship that we have with victimhood and vulnerability. Yeah. So we relate to it as if it gives us the right so that we keep victimizing ourselves, as opposed to, yes, I am a victim, and in certain areas, in some cases, life is occurring to me and I'm not the source, but I'm better to put my attention into the areas that I can influence. Yeah, I can find the tiniest thread so that I can pull this string and I can change the course to a degree. And that's basically what we talk about, responsibility.
Mm.
So now, if we want to make this common human experience, yeah, a bit more tangible, because this is not a new topic. Like we have, for example, victimhood and a victim archetype in Jungian archetypes. Yeah, so that's one of um, the archetypes that, like, Carl Jung believed that everyone relates to in one or another. And it's not necessarily a negative phenomena. Yeah, it can be positive, and we can talk about it. But so yeah, so it's not new. Like Carl Jung talked about it. Many others have talked about it. We take it quite seriously. This conversation around responsibility, the being discourse, in my body of work, in the work that we do together, working with people. Now, in order for us to make it a bit more tangible, um, so what kind of examples you see as you work with people out there that this victimhood mentality comes to play and runs the show?
Yeah, and I think just touching on what you said, there is this key distinction that is, yes, we are vulnerable. Things do happen to us. And that, in a way, does make us a victim of so many things that are out there in the world that we can't control. The difference, I think, that we want to make in this conversation is that that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a victim in all aspects of your life and that you need to live life from a place of victimhood. But we do, right? We might have moments of that, or we have experiences where maybe around one situation we can stay there in this mentality of there is nothing I can do, this is happening, and I have no power around it. And you said, like, how can we make a clear example? In I work a lot in organizations, and one thing that is clear in organizations is the level of change that a lot of them, leaders in senior positions, even if they wanted to, they can't control. It might be the someone in their team that they've trained, that they've supported, and that they've seen grow and they're counting on leaves their team. It might be something around budget or the amount of people that they can now hire, to actually see those projects that they've planned and they've invested in realized. So all of these things might happen to someone in a position of leadership in an organization. Then the question there that I see a lot of them come to, at least for me in terms of coaching, is how can I best deal with this that's happening? How can I position myself in a way that I can influence the outcome of the situation? And it might seem really articulated when I say it, but it's messy. People come with complaints, people come with a lot of resignation of feeling that this has happened all before, it's happening again, there's just nothing I can do around this. So there's a lot of feelings and emotions that come with that. It might be despair, it might be, sometimes it's anger and a lot of frustration I see around why things are happening to me, why these things keep happening in my organization. They might think that they can go somewhere else so these things don't happen to them.
Yeah.
But I guess in the conversations, what we look to create is that space where they can really ask themselves, what is it that they can influence? How is it that they can show up that would make a difference? And that can be as simple as, sometimes it's from taking care of themselves so that they can show up less angry, less frustrated. And sometimes it is conversations that they haven't started, requests that they haven't made, um, and so many other things that are in their control that they can influence that would make a difference to the experience that they're having without changing necessarily the circumstances that they're faced with.
Yeah. 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 So I think what it is like we would like to think that we are strong. Yeah. And so the thing is, the reality is there are so many limitations to our sensory abilities. Yeah. For example, our sense of scent is not as strong as dogs, or our vision may not be as strong as some other animals. So we know that our sensory abilities are quite limited. At the same time, we know that our perceptual structure is limited all the way to our rationality or our conceptual structure. So we know that not all the time our rationality is going to work in our favor. Perhaps most of the decisions that we have made on an individual level, we have made it at some point rationally. Yeah. And that's quite confronting to be this vulnerable or face this level of vulnerability, that see all the equipments that I have, all the tools that I have to make sense of the world and then make effective decisions and take effective actions can be limited. And it can be error prone and faulty here and there. So but then, like relating to life as what it is, from an ontological perspective, extremely important. And when it comes to the victimhood, yeah, as we said, like yes, we are a victim here and there, but what's your response to it, as you touched on it? Like, are you going to keep victimizing yourself, or you're going to see if you can address it to a degree? But this willingness is extremely important, because so if you're relating to life, and all in it in such a way that you are the epicenter of the universe, you need to, things should go fully your way, you're going to constantly find yourself being frustrated and disheartened. And the thing is, sometimes we falsely um, identify as more than what we are in general as human beings. So we love to
Mm.
be gods, that like we have unlimited power in all aspects of our lives. And um, but the reality is it's not like that. So now, so I would like to make it. I mean, I would like you to make it a bit more tangible as you work with people. Like, where exactly this this victimhood mentality comes up? Can you give us some tangible examples?
I think you have different levels of victimhood. It's that you can go
Hmm.
from little examples of moments in your day to day life, like is I don't know,
Yeah.
I missed the train to get to that workshop or that meeting, and I can make it about my children that didn't get ready in time in the morning for me to get out of the house. Like that's a small moment of victimhood where I think, because of all of these other things that happened, I couldn't get there on time, or I can get the train. But then there is this, I think, this bigger conversation around when something that we care about, something that's important to us, we can't hit the result, we can't see it fulfilled. So, a bigger one for me is that I work with a lot of coaches, and they care about what they do. They normally, coaches come to this profession because they love to contribute to others. So there's a real passion for what they do, but not necessarily does it mean that it's easy to be a successful coach when you are building a business, when you are looking to get clients. And you hear it in their language that it's because of the industry, because of the product, because there is too many coaches, and they put a lot of the
Yeah.
reasons out there. And and for me, that becomes like a bigger narrative that, how do you call it, would you say that it tints everything they see, so it becomes the
Mm,
narrative around what's possible for them. And that for me is a different conversation, because what you
mm,
do there is you have to really tap into what are the reasons, what are the ways that they're seeing themselves first and foremost, and then seeing the situation, seeing the possibilities that make them feel that they have no power around it, that this is not
yeah.
something that they can own, so they can shift.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, this is actually really great. Yes. So I think the way I look at it is definitely um so when you said these are small things, immediately it came to my mind that like most of our life is all about these small things. Yeah. um so therefore your joy and happiness at the same time, like the moments of victimhood that you're going to find yourself in, that you said life is happening to us, is like, yes, like you want to go and then do something, and then something happened, and like someone else's decisions impacting yours, things gets canceled, your kids are going to get like sick, and then you need to shift things, and so many of these little things at the end of the day are creating a big portion of our experience of life. And and as you said that, yes, like the more you see these kind of situation happening, or for example, like if you are a business leader, and then you're seeing that like certain decisions are being made by your competitors, at the same time you have certain inauthenticities going on within your organization, some key people betrayed you, and then they are leaving putting their resignation, they're working with the competitor. You're seeing that the market is changing, you're seeing that The government is putting certain policies that all of a sudden, without you predicting them, that are going to impact the whole trajectory of your next couple of years that you have planned with your strategy team. So you can easily get disarmed and be disheartened and go, you know what, like in the midst of all these uncertainties, I'm trying to find ways and then maneuver and then go ahead, but it's like every force out there is against me. And then the more you create this kind of a narrative, then it becomes your dominant narrative. And then, as you said, like, we're going to see life like that. And in some severe cases, I mean, like, we see that people drop their dreams and goals and businesses collapse, and to the point that, unfortunately, in some cases, some may fall into things like severe depression and anxiety disorders and other mental health issues. And in worst case of scenarios, perhaps would be some that unfortunately would decide to disassociate themselves from existence. And these are serious matters. So now, um, but then now in all that, like, when you zoom out and then you see the precedences, yeah, because this is, see, when people say that, oh, why this happened to me, like, the immediate response would be, why not? I mean, like, is it good if this, whatever you don't like, happened to your neighbor or your colleague or the other person and not you? So this is the part of this package called life. Yeah, so that's a very fundamental thing, like how a person relates to autonomy, how a person relates to life, and that is there. And I think that, like, in the work that we do, one of the most important thing is we encourage people to see possibilities that they previously were not able to see. You know, with that freedom, with that courage. And so, can you bring us some tangible example that, as you work with people, then they're dealing with that resignation, they're dealing with that, like, succumbing to the circumstances, and then they shift the way that they're relating to the circumstances, and with freedom and autonomy and courage, they are willing to look into some possibilities. Yeah, can you give us some tangible example?
Yeah, this is. I have a lot of coaching, like from my coaching individuals, examples from there, and I'll relate to one, a particular one, where this person had a complaint for bullying, yeah, in their organization. And by the time they'd got to me, they'd done an internal investigation, which is a very painful process because they interview people, and they were the bully. They were being accused of being the bully. So of course that was a shocking experience for them because they didn't relate to themselves as that. But once it was there, it was sort of, well, this person is trying to get me. They want my job. They're against me, and that's how they came to the conversation, trying to, uh, in a way, unpack all the things that were against them, and the things that were wrong around this claim about them being a bully.
Mm,
The thing is that this had been going on for 6 months, and in the last 6 months
mm,
they weren't sleeping. They had they felt angry all the time. Their relationship with their partner wasn't that good because they couldn't be told anything against this way of thinking that they were the victim in this bully claim.
yeah.
But throughout the coaching and some work that we did, the main shift was really noticing that, okay, that claim had been done. The other person, they could have done so many things differently before getting to that claim. Of course, they could have come to talk to
Yeah.
them, they could have resolved it in so many other ways, but the fact was that they were, in this moment, this was what was happening. So there was a part of it that, as you say before, is that instead of
Mm,
dissociated teeing around what they wanted things to look like, it was really getting real around, well, this is happening, this is the claim, this investigation is happening, and your job, in a way, is on the line. So first acknowledging
Mm.
that was a big thing. And then the work around
Yeah.
it was acknowledging what they could have done that contributed to that. And once they were willing to
Mm.
look, that's not necessarily easy because you said it takes a lot of courage. It can be very painful to look at ourselves and say, maybe I had something to do with this claim. Maybe there is a bit of reality in this
Mm.
claim that I did something wrong that actually hurt someone else.
Mm.
And with that vulnerability, with that courage to look, we were able to start identifying what are some of the behaviors that they were doing, and what were the things that were driving that. So a lot had to do with fear. A lot had to do with them not being assertive in moments. So they would go into full on anger and trying to control the other person versus having the conversations before so that they could
Yeah.
work through and be really clear who was accountable for what. So for this person, there was a lot going on around fear, assertiveness, how they
Yeah.
vulnerable felt, but we could only get to that once they were willing to, I guess, own that there was a part
Mhm.
that they had played. And the result
Yeah.
of looking at it is the empowerment. I think like that's the biggest thing. You like shifting and understanding that you there is something that you did, but that it's in your own power to start shifting those things. So dealing with your fears, learning how to be more assertive, forgiving yourself for whatever you did or you didn't do, all of that allowed them to feel empowered and feel like there was something that they could do to make a difference and at least avoid this happening to them again.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing is like um to be able to see it. Yeah. So you need to clean your
Mm.
lens so that you can at least see and be in acknowledgement that there is something. Yeah. Whether you are on the victim side or the person who is being accused that victimizing the other person or
But
offending this
you
other
can
person.
But you can be a victim when you're being accused. So you can victimize yourself when you're being
Of course.
accused of
Yeah.
hurting someone else. And we do that. Like,
That's a good
I've
one.
got
Yeah.
3 children. I see
Yeah.
it all the time. One did something to the other,
Mm.
and the one that was the one that started the fight then becomes the victim. And you think, like, when did this happen? Like in 2 seconds, they've decided not to own up to what they did that actually started the fight.
Yeah.
And my children are little, all under 10 years, and they already are masters at
Yes.
doing that.
That this is quite familiar to me, not only firsthand and then working with people, and then you're talking about the kids, and I so
Mm.
understand what you mean. But also now I had the opportunity at some point being part of the system design team of like the case management, complex case management software for victim services Australia, like basically like people on one side being the victim and then other side we have offenders, and often it happens that the offenders become the victim and vice versa, and people they take revenge and they just do wrong doing to each other. And so now, so to some, these conversation can be ridiculous. Yeah. So certain high performing teams will be there, and then like they have it so working in great part. But this is a reality. Yeah. So this is a reality that yes, you have a business, you have deliverables, you have promises that you have made, and all these, like things are supposed to go professionally. But then behind this mask of professionalism, then you're going to have all of these human related, quite primal experiences of different people wanting to work together. We need to have people working together, coming from diverse background, relating to life and all in it quite differently. They get offended, like on different things. Yeah, you never can guess how exactly a person is going to be offended and be triggered. Yeah. So all of these things are there, and then they get in the way. They get in the way of the performance of the team. So now, so the last thing, let's discuss like what would be the antidote to that, you think?
I always think like choose your discomfort, because there's discomfort in feeling a victim. There's a lot of discomfort. There's the disempowerment. There is the constantly thinking that someone else is doing something to you or did something to you. So that's uncomfortable. It can be painful. But the antidote, and it's not necessarily easy, but it's quite simple. It is to really look at what can we own around the situation, and where can we take responsibility and accountability to to one, acknowledge where we're at, acknowledge what our part is in it, and then what can we do to shift it? Sometimes it can be starting that conversation. Sometimes it can be saying sorry. That's a big one. Sometimes it's acknowledging where you're at, and then that there's something that you're doing, a way that you're showing up that is creating that dynamic in a relationship, for example. But that
Sure.
ownership, that
Yeah.
responsibility, that accountability, it's uncomfortable, but it's a discomfort that's empowering versus a discomfort that
Yeah.
can be disempowering when you're being a victim. So you might be tempted to think, well, I can just be responsible, I can be accountable, but really what is underlying and in the discussion that we're having is that there's some deeper qualities that allow us to do that. And it's how we relate to them that makes a difference. So this is where I use personally, and all the people that you work with, Ashkan, too, is we use the being discourse, because it does allow us to understand and in a way articulate those deeper parts of us that are contributing to this victim mentality, or us relating to ourselves as a victim of circumstances. We've spoken about some already, like the how do we relate to the authenticity. So really, what is happening and how do we relate to the reality of matters. um, then the vulnerabilities, the fears, the anxieties that it creates to step into this being empowered, and being responsible around the circumstances that we face. So I guess there's
Yeah.
so much others. We've spoken about forgiveness, about commitment, but they all play their part. And not to
Mm,
acknowledge that these are there could take us to thinking, this is something, this is a quick fix, I just have to do X, Y, and Z.
mm,
But it doesn't work like that. That's why I want
mm,
to, this is where we want to make these human experiences relatable, because we all experience a certain level of this, but acknowledging how they play its role and how they impact us, I think that is
mm.
the powerful thing that we
Yeah.
can do, and that the space that we can create with this framework.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think the it's quite tempting, isn't it? Yeah. So when we see a problem on the surface, we go, you know what? We got enough information from it. So kind of surface level reasoning, whatever information is available to us, we can be quite biased around that. And then we go, yeah, so this is the problem, let's go address it. And often when
Mhm.
people go to consultants and coaches, people can they can bring in to address some of these issues, it's already too late. And they think that, okay, this is the problem, can you help us solve it? But then often when you go there as a professional and then you want to look into what's going on, the culture of this organization, how the power dynamic works, how the relationship between the people work, what's making like people not being able to be comfortable around each other and then be assertive, etc., etc., then you want to look into uh, the the being of these different individuals, how they think, how they feel, what's their feelings, how they interpret their emotions, what kind of decisions are they're making on a daily basis in interactions with others, and what sort of prioritization they have, like what's their hierarchy of value individually and collectively as a team in an organization, and how they make decisions, and then how they end up behaving at the end of the day, and then the aggregation of all of these things that, like in the being framework, my body of work, I use this cluster word being to refer to an aggregation of all of these things I just mentioned. Then it matters because it's then your being that is going to, how you're being that is going to, in great part, determine the results that you're going to produce. And all of that is going to lead you to experience life in a certain way. Yeah, and that's like where it comes to satisfaction and happiness and um, you know those kind of things. So all good. I think that like we've covered a good um, I mean a good amount of conversations regarding the victimhood, and so the conversation to be continued. Like we're going to continue this type of conversation in this series. Um, is there any final conversation you want to have? Any final message before we wrap this episode up?
I think the one thing that is still there for me is that one of the biggest things that we can do around the victimhood conversation is to first understand how do we relate to a responsibility. And I would say that
Mm,
that normally is a pivotal moment in the working with clients where they get to understand that being responsible is not about a burden, about saying yes to everything or taking the blame, but that when they understand that responsibility is their ability to honor and step into their autonomy, like honor the autonomy and choose. When they get that,
mhm,
it makes such a difference to how they relate to the matters that they're dealing with. And that I believe is
definitely.
is part
Mm,
of the beauty of the work that we get to do, is that we can support people to relate to these core qualities in a different
mm.
way that then allows them to be more fulfilled, to be more effective, and then to step out of victimhood if that's the case and if that's what they're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the great news is like we're not doomed to be the way that we are. We're not doomed to relate to the things, including autonomy and responsibility, the way that we currently do.
So if I can just add something to that is we're not doomed,
Sure,
but
sure.
also we don't get to choose the rules of the game. And this is something you told me a long time ago when I asked you, well, if we know victimhood doesn't work,
Mm,
if we don't know it's uncomfortable and it doesn't get us the results, then why do we do it? And I remember you clearly said is
yeah,
we don't get to choose the rules, but we can learn how to deal with that and how in a way play with the game of existence, of being human, and what that means.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the thing is, we're not fixated, and we can look into alternative perceptions, alternative ways to relate to any of these core qualities. We call them aspects of being, and that's the whole conversation around transformability. We may not be mutable in our totality, but definitely we are transformable, and we see it on a daily basis. And this is the thing that is extremely important to me, and I think to us, Lucy,
Yeah.
that we can have more and more people looking into these areas. Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for being with us, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and thank you very much, Lucy, for being with me. um, we talk soon in the next episode.
Thank you, Ashkan.
Bye.